Anyone ever found a body? What's that like? I worked at a retirement home for about a year, more specific at the dementia part of the house, and we had one man who every day was worried sick for his wife, who has been dead for 8 years. On his birthday both of his daughters showed up and talked and showed slot of pictures. He didn't remember his daughters, but he recognized his wife. Tears of joy, he watched pictures and told stories. The morning after, when I went to wake him up, he was dead. He had a big smile on his face, and it was somehow very beautiful. I believe it is a rarity to die perfectly happy, especially those caught in the grips of dementia. It may have been the perfect storm for that man to have forgotten all of his troubles and be but peacefully with the memories of his wife guiding him out. I worked a brief stint in a hospital, and my floor saw a good amount of patients with dementia. There's one guy in particular I remember who was with us for a few days. He would introduce himself by a name that wasn't his, and when he was reminded of his actual name he gave a thoughtful "oh yeah, that's right." There were a few other moments I remember, but what stuck out to me was that he just seemed perfectly content with how confused he was. So many dementia patients seemed like they're constantly terrified or angry, and it made me so happy to see that this guy was pretty alright with things. I was at the shooting range once, my first time actually, and an older gentleman shot himself in the stall closest to the door. Everyone had to walk right past his body to evacuate. Gruesome. It looks more disturbing in real life than the movies, and everything moved more slowly once I saw it. I was just getting comfortable with my weapon when they called a ceasefire, and I stood there wondering what had happened. Suddenly it was calls of "everybody get out. Now. Go. Go." Pretty terrifying when you can't initially see what's on either side of you because of the lane barriers and you're wondering, what the hell happened so bad we're evacuating? Then just really sad to realize what happened. There was a kid there about 10 years old with his dad and brother. Hate it. Was it accidental or suicide? Can't tell from your post. Suicide. Cops figured out later in the day he'd even left a note for his ex-wife, saying he was suicidal and outlining his plan. She just didn't believe it. She felt like shit. Probably still does. It was his last call for help. Found my dad dead, heart attack, one morning as a 7-year-old. Then when I was 8 I found my grandfather dead, fell, hit his head into tub full of water one morning. I'm so sorry you had to see that, and at such a young age too. Were you counseled after that at all? Did you receive any support afterwards? Honestly, it didn't really bother me until I was in my 20s and my twin brother was murdered. Then I went through some severe PTSD or anxiety type symptoms, which I later found out was anticipatory grief. My mother is still alive, perfectly healthy, but I was so worried that she would drop dead one day and I'd find her. She had a stroke like the day after getting the news about my brother. A full family, father, mother plus 2 kids, dead in an upside down car on a dark road. That's sad. I hope you are okay. I used to work at this sports bar, so it wasn't uncommon for people to leave their car in parking lot for a day or two. After having a couple days off, I come into work and this car that was there a day before my weekend started is still parked in the same spot. I tell me boss about it and go check it out. As I get close to the car, the smell hits me like a truck. Some guy committed suicide in his car during a heatwave in the middle of summer. I call the cops and tell my boss. When the police arrived, I was asked to make a statement. While I was doing this, the paramedics showed up to remove the body. They got this bloated, rotten corpse halfway out of the vehicle when it just fell apart, splattering on the pavement. I'll never forget that decking smell. I had a friend in grad school who was a paramedic. She has a similar story, except the body had been sitting for a week. To this day she can't eat avocados. Edit. Yes. My usernames is ihat_Abbas. But that's just a coincidence. I hated avocados long before my friend told me this story. We did bond over our mutual dislike for avocados though. One night I was out walking my dog along a country road where a ditch accompanied the road either side. As I was walking, my dog started going mad trying to tug away from his lead to this ditch, so I wanted to see what it was. It ended up being a corpse, so I called the cops. They found out that a gang murder happened in a city about 40 miles away, and one of the members thought a small village would be a great place to put it. Your dog's a damn snitch, that's all I know. Snitches get scritches. Went to check on my uncle because he'd not been heard from. I knew before I got the front door open that he was dead by the smell. He was in his recliner. Drank himself to an early grave. I fear that this is going to be how I find my mom. When you walked in and knew by the smell, did you still go and look at him or call the police first? I'm one of the people who gets that call. Don't go in and look. Just don't. It's not what you think it's gonna be. They could very well be a bloated, discolored mess or an unrecognizable, gelatinous pile with maggots and flies everywhere. Either way, no one wants or needs that picture of a loved one seared into their memory. Edit. No one really thinks or plans for this, but if you ever find yourself in this rough spot, there's gross stuff that needs to be cleaned. Don't feel like you have to do it yourself. That's equally traumatizing. Contact Home ER1's insurance or search yourself for local crime scene cleanup companies or biohazard cleanup. My granddad was a few months shy of 90 and still lived by himself. He was pretty spry. My mom called him every morning. One day he didn't answer, so she called me to go over and check on him. They lived about 40 minutes away, and I lived about 5 minutes away. I let myself in and found him in his easy chair holding his phone. He was cold. My dad showed up in about 20 minutes and we both cried. I called the police and they came in, checked it out, and did us a favor of calling the funeral home we asked. My dad said he was talking with him about 9 PM the night before and said he was sounding groggy. So he said goodnight, and granddad must have rested and passed. He was a great guy. Edit. I'm overwhelmed with all the kind comments and awards. I truly thank you all. Oh my. I'm very sorry for your loss. At least he lived a nice life and died a peaceful death. I don't mean to offend you. Edit. Thank you guys very much for my first ever awards. You didn't. Thank you. He passed in 2003. A lot of water has flowed under my bridge since. Has nothing but happy memories to me now. Our town's baseball field's for Little League is in front of a small fence row of woods with an interstate on the other side. One hot day in July, like 90th all week, everyone at the game started smelling something awful. A couple of the dads and coaches went to go look, and there was a dead guy on the interstate side of the fence row. I guess a trucker broke down and was walking for help and died of heat stroke. I was playing baseball and never actually saw, but still a crazy day. In November of 2004, I had a very best friend who lived 3 blocks from me. We were both managers of the same restaurant, but I had recently graduated from college and had started my career path, but still worked with him on weekends and school vacations. One freezing cold Monday night, the restaurant called saying he hadn't shown up for work. I had a key, so my roommate and I walked over. Upon entering his apartment, he was dead on the couch after taking more than 1 bottle of Ambien and a handle of vodka. I don't remember all the details of what I remember from the scene or what it looked like. I'm paying a lot of money in therapy to forget. I genuinely hope you're better these days. That sucks. I found my dad's body after he killed himself last year. He was lying face down on his bed, so the blood had pooled down to his stomach and face, making him almost unrecognizable. His face was smooshed in, and his body was mottled blue, as he had killed himself during the night. It was an overdose. He mixed bottles of pills, oxycodone, Flexeril, Ativan, amitriptyline, and more, with alcohol and stopped breathing. I'll never forget time slowing down and feeling as if I wasn't there. I have severe anxiety and had dissociated before, but the dissociation that hits you when you experience trauma like this is truly something else. I knew he was dead, but my mind wasn't letting me acknowledge it. I was apparently screaming, and I don't remember doing so. I tried to wake him up. I called to him and touched his shoulders and accidentally stepped in the puddle where he had peed himself. Feeling how stiff and cold his body was jarring. I was still in shock, but I remember it finally semi-clicking in my brain that he was dead the moment I touched him. I called emergency services, but don't remember the process of doing so. My dad had been suicidal for years, and I was used to taking care of him during his drug and alcohol binges. As such, I had been mentally preparing myself for this moment for years. He had tried to mutilate and shoot himself a year before, and I'd cleaned his blood then. I had even worked crime and trauma scene cleanup for a few years. I've seen terrible things. I've cleaned blood, brain matter, bone, and more. But finding my own dad dead shocked me so much that I finally blacked out as he was wheeled away. I ended up having to clean everything up again. Even after I had made my dad promise me he'd never do this to me again. Nothing will ever completely prepare you for losing a loved one or finding a body. No matter how much you may think you're desensitized or used to it, or think you may be okay, in the end nobody knows how they will react. To this day, my family's screams of anguish are what I remember the most from that day. The absolute worst part is the guilt and shame that rocks through you. You wonder if there was something you could have done to save them. You wonder if they'd still be alive if only you had done X or Y. Over a year later, and I'm still suffering these thoughts. I would never wish this on anyone. Edit. I just wanted to say that I'm absolutely gobsmacked and humbled by the replies I've gotten from people. I was expecting my comment to enter the void as per usual, but instead I've gotten people reaching out with similar stories and supporting me. It's made me feel less alone on a day that I've been struggling, and for that I'm grateful. Thank you all so much. It's made a difference. You sound like a wonderful son/daughter, and I'm so sorry that you had to experience this. Hang in there. Hugs to you. Was with my mom. We were doing an occupancy check because this guy's hadn't paid his rent. This behavior was normal for the people who live on the property, so we go in and see if the apartment was empty. I go to the back room and he's dead in bed. But did he pay his rent? I feel like this isn't that much of a place to make a joke, but thanks for making it. I was on the verge of tears because of the cancer discussion at the top. My mom has it 4 years after diagnosis, and she's still around thankfully, but you're helping me feel a lot better. Back in the mid-80s, fresh out of college, got a job on a survey crew for the summer working on a section of highway just off of Interstate 80 in Wyoming. We always came across dead animals that had been hit by cars. But one day we had pulled off in a secured spot to eat lunch when we saw something out in the field, literally 40 miles from the nearest town, flopping around. We just passed it off as some deer that had been hit by a car and had crawled into the field to die. We went on and ate our lunch. Before we went back to work, our survey crew leader said, "Let's go take a look at what that is." The closer we got, we all knew it was a human being. She was still alive. Barely, but still alive. We radioed in what we discovered, and within about 30 minutes an air ambulance was on the scene. Before the ambulance got there we gave her water, but didn't move her. She couldn't speak, but we could tell she was thankful we were there and found her. They flew her down to Colorado, where she made a full recovery. Turned out she was traveling cross country with her boyfriend when they got into an argument and he decided to off her and dump her body. Thing was, she wasn't dead when he dumped her body where we found her. He had beat her and strangled her with a rope, and when she passed out he thought she was dead and dumped her. Never heard any more, but only know she made a full recovery and the guy went to prison. Edit. Thank you all so very much for all the upvotes and numerous awards. Many of you had great comments and questions that were wonderful to read. One reader suggested I attempt to contact the victim. I'm mulling that over. It's been 35 years. Yes, there are things I would like to know for closure on my end, but I'm still not sure I want to open healed wounds on her end of things. That day, we just happened to be in the right place, at the right time. Otherwise it would have ended differently. We found a body washed up in the rocks on the beach. I was taking photos of vultures because they were sitting on the rocks and they were pretty large. I first saw his distended stomach and followed it down to his foot. I grabbed my husband and said, "That's a body. Is that a body? Oh my gosh, that's a body!" Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. After double checking, we walked away to call 911. Checking a third time. From a different angle, I saw some of his skull missing and the unmistakable human hand. Somehow, we were able to get cell service long enough to tell the 911 dispatcher which state park we were in. Ambulance, firefighters, state police, a Coast Guard helicopter, truck and boat all showed up. It was amazing to watch. They carried him up in a body bag, placed him on the asphalt, and left him there for 30 minutes. It was just another day to first responders. Oddly, we are thankful to have found him, because he was on part of the beach no one ever crosses a river to get to. The tide was coming in when he was pulled out. Had we not found him when we found him, the crabs and vultures would have finished him off. His family would have never had answers. I don't know his name or anything other than what we witnessed. We are fine. Our trauma of finding a body is nothing compared to what his family would have endured, never knowing what happened to him. Edit. The first responders were amazing to work with. I was so surprised when they asked us how we were doing. EMT came over to confirm the death and said, "How are you handling this? Do you need talk? You are my patient now. There is nothing more I can do for him." The state trooper asked as well. It wasn't until that point we realized we were victims in a way also. A huge shout out and thank you to all of the first responders reading this. Every day, you professionally handle what may likely be somebody's worst nightmare. You are amazing people. Please take care of yourselves. Thank you for all the awards and updates. I've enjoyed reading all the responses. Edit. For those asking, we found him August 21st, 2020 in Oregon. What a caring and compassionate outlook on such a sad event. I found my dad after he hung himself. It was obviously extremely traumatizing and has taken a lot of therapy. I still get triggered if a movie shows a hanging scene, but I'm doing a lot better. Found my uncle dead in his apartment. I learned that day what a rotting body smells like. The answer is rancid fish. Rotting flesh/meat is the worst thing I've ever smelled. A rat died in between some scrap wood we had outside. We couldn't see it for days. It was disgustingly pungent. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more videos.